Hello and welcome to this lesson where we're going to discuss some important key concepts that are relevant when designing vouchers. The first key concept is color mode. And so when we go here to File New in Adobe Illustrator, we can see that we have down here under Advanced, we have the color mode. Now, depending on the application you're using, it doesn't necessarily have to be Adobe Illustrator. It could be Photoshop, it could be InDesign, or any other number of software for graphic design. It usually will allow you to specify the color mode. So the color mode, most often, you're going to use CMYK for something that's going to be printed. Now, for something that's going to be digital, something that's going to be seen on your computer or smartphone or a screen of some sort, it's going to be RGB. Now, there are some differences. Sometimes you don't always use CMYK for something that's print-based. For instance, there's something called Pantone color matching system, which you can use. But yeah, those are the differences between the color modes. So most often you'll see CMYK that's generally reserved for print, and then RGB is for something that's digital. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about are bleeds, trim lines, and safety zones. Now, these are not specific to voucher design, but rather any design that's intended for print purposes. So if you're going to be designing a voucher that's going to be printed, it's absolutely essential that you understand what these are. So real quickly, I'll walk through it here with you in Adobe Illustrator. And so we could see, let's just say, for instance, we have a width and height of 210 millimeters by 100. All right, so the bleed, as we can see right here, we can see we have top, bottom, left, and right. And usually these are all going to be the same, which is what this little icon is for. So the bleed, let's say, for instance, we want to make a 10 millimeter bleed. Now, if we hit OK, we'll see that we have this red outline. Now, this is what's called the bleed. Now, what the bleed is basically when you have any elements of the design that you want to extend all the way out to the edge of the card, you need to make sure that those elements reach or match this red line, or the bleed essentially. Now, the trim line is actually going to occur somewhere between this point and this point. So it's between the bleed and the canvas size. All right, so that's physically where it will be cut when it's printed. And then you have the safety zone inside here. So if you have important elements that need to be read, such as type, for instance, or a photograph, you want to make sure it's well inside the safety zone so that it doesn't risk being cut off right here. All right, so that's really all the terminologies of bleed, trim lines, and safety zones. That's all that means. All right, so the next key concept that I really want to stress is the importance of good typography. Entire courses could be devoted to the various aspects of typography, but I'm only going to touch on the very basics in this lesson. Now, when you're designing vouchers, you're obviously going to have type involved. And a voucher is something that usually costs companies a lot of money. So whether it's a print-based voucher or a digital voucher, you have to make sure it's very important that your ad copy on the voucher is readable and easy to understand. Otherwise, you will inhibit the effectiveness of the campaign. So you achieve good type through appropriate font size, tracking and leading, otherwise known as letter spacing and line height, typeface selection, such as the decision to use a serif or sans serif font, position, and color and contrast. So these are all things that we're going to cover when we work on our projects. Another key concept is relevance. So when you're designing a voucher, you're communicating with people visually. The photographs you use, the graphic design elements that you use, the type, and the entire look and feel of the piece should be relevant based on the target audience and the intended goal. So if you already design a voucher for like a bakery, as we will in one of our projects, it would make sense to use imagery and design that's relevant to a bakery setting. We'll touch more on this as we progress throughout this course and the ensuing projects. And then finally, another key concept is to shed light on the technical considerations between print-based vouchers and digital vouchers. Now remember, when it comes to color modes, RGB is generally reserved for digital vouchers in the form of a banner, and CMYK is for printable vouchers. So for digital vouchers, you're not going to have to worry about bleeds, trim lines, and safety zones, as we just discussed, as you would for printable vouchers. Digital vouchers can also include web banners, whose dimensions vary greatly based on industry standards, and also email-based vouchers. Now that we have the important concepts out of the way, let's go ahead and begin putting all of this together by proceeding to our first project. I'll see you then.